welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess, and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today. And if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because, it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going. All right, well, I hope you're all pumped up and ready because today we are talking about protecting endpoints, understanding human and technical solutions. And I am so excited to get into this conversation with all of you today because I love this cross section of technology and psychology, the places where humans and tech intersect, right? Because we can have all the best technology in the world, but at some point, we have to introduce that fun little chaos element, the people, the human element, right? That's the exciting bit. That's the unknown bit. That's the thing that we're going to get into and explore today. And we are not alone on this journey because we have top experts here with us today from CyberArk and VMware who are going to guide us through this exciting conversation. I know that you're all excited. You're ready. This might even be your first EcoCast back with us in 2024. Some of you joined us yesterday, but if you haven't, welcome back. We missed you all. So happy to be back here with you all as we start out this new year. And what better way to start out the new year than talking about endpoints. Now, if I haven't introduced myself to you yet, my name is Jess Steinbach. I am a moderator here at Actual Tech Media. My friends and fellow moderators, Scott Becker and Keith Ward, are here with us on live chat today. And we also have a special treat. We have a brand new moderator, Mackenzie Pudici, who is joining us here on our team. And you will be hearing from him on mic very soon. Hopefully in the next week or so, you'll get to chat with Mackenzie. He's awesome. You will all be very excited to get to know him. And he is here with us today on live chat as well. So you can kind of get to know Mackenzie a little bit over chat and then stay tuned for him joining us on mic very soon. All right, and even more exciting news, we've got some prizes for all of you. You knew that was coming. We do have for you today one of three $300 Amazon gift cards that we will be giving away to 3 lucky winners. So please stay tuned for those. Now, I do need to remind you that you do need to be here live and present at the webinar in order to win those prizes. You all know that by now. You know what the T's and C's are. But hey, if you do need a reminder of those terms and conditions, they're available for you in the handouts tab. So click on over to that handouts tab and you can find the full terms and conditions waiting for you there. All right. Well, I want to keep things moving right along because we've got some awesome content to get into. And I think we are ready for our keynote speaker. Now, a few of you will recognize this name up on the screen here because we have chatted with Larry before and you already know that you are in for a treat here. I am very excited to introduce our keynote speaker on today's EcoCast, and that's Larry Seltzer, security analyst and author. Now, Larry is going to talk to us a little bit today about what he calls the current state of peak endpoint. Larry, I am very excited to hear more about what you mean by peak endpoint. So I'm going to hand things right on over to you. Take it away, Larry.
Hello, everyone. I'm Larry Seltzer. I've been writing software and working with technology for decades and focusing on security, writing about it for a while now. And so for a long time, most of the action in IT development was in endpoints, like the one you're watching this on. You can make a case that in terms of features, we've reached peak endpoint, and all the action now is in the cloud running somewhere else. You don't know or care where. This phenomenon has greatly affected endpoint security, making it more complex and more effective. Many important computing functions once performed on endpoints are now in the cloud. This has created the somewhat ironic situation in which more and more of the considerable compute resources on our endpoints are dedicated to security. This is a picture I took of a display many years ago in the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. and it expresses what is largely a truism of human behavior. I'll just read it. Simply put, it is possible to have convenience if you want to tolerate insecurity, but if you want security, you must be prepared for inconvenience. Um, so the more security you want, the less convenience you can expect. When General Benjamin Chidlaw said this in 1954, he wasn't speaking of IT security, but the truism holds. He was thinking of, for instance, freedom of movement of people in a secure area like a military base or out in the normal world. And if we wanted to make it more secure, this is a lesson we've learned with respect to airports, although we've gotten a little more sophisticated about it there. So as we make IT more secure, we generally make it less convenient. This isn't just for users on endpoints, but that's where it's most keenly felt. And it's a major constraint on those who design and enforce security on endpoints because the more inconvenient it gets to do what you want to do, the more of an incentive you have to find ways around security. And here's a real world illustration of how people find ways around security, especially if it's badly designed. There's a semi famous security meme. Okay, here are some of the edgier developments in endpoint security. Automation of security is probably the most important activity going on in larger organizations. There's so much that security needs to monitor and act on that there's no chance it will get done unless it's automated. I presented here a few months ago about DevSecOps, which is automation of the software development process through testing through deployment, with security involved all along the way. A lot of money spent creating and deploying these processes because they're the only way to run large and complex software systems with any measure of security anymore. It's not obvious to the reader, but there's a lot of automated security going on with their endpoint software. There are some fairly new classes of security automation on endpoints called endpoint detection and response, or EDR, which performs real time monitoring, and extended detection and response, or XDR, which provides automated responses to threats. XDR extends this by integrating various security features into the vendor's cloud ecosystem, offering a more comprehensive security posture. One way endpoint security deals with all the complexity of the threat landscape is that security companies use machine learning to create AI models that are deployed as part of the endpoint security software. They help predict and identify new threats, enhancing the ability to respond to unknown or evolving threats. They're endpoints, so I'll briefly mention the zillions of IoT devices, which are by definition, they're actually endpoints. They're not general purpose compute devices. Um, Most of them, like sensors on a factory floor or RFID devices used for highway toll collection, these are fairly simple devices designed to do one thing and do it inexpensively. They don't have a full network stack. You can't run third party security software on them, but they still need to be protected. And we do this with different techniques, with network management techniques to isolate them and prevent all but necessary communications with them. Automation is um, it's important not just for performance and convenience, but because humans are always the weakest link in any security scheme. Um, Even a sophisticated actor looking at a phishing email needs to be careful and examine multiple parts of it. It may be immediately obvious that it's a fake, but it's dangerous to immediately judge that an email is legit as opposed to a high quality spearfish. The example on the slide is it's on the credible side. I don't see any obvious misspellings. Um, and it's probably closely based on the actual Google alert, that it looks like. And I've gotten these in the past. You click on the link in this one, I don't know what happens. um, Automated systems mostly don't look at the content of the email, but they scrutinize the addressing and other metadata, um, and links in the email. And as to whether the content is legit, a human may have to make a judgment, and can be unclear. And there are moments when these are the moments when major attacks make their breakthrough into a target network. In general, security systems should rely on humans to the smallest extent possible. Everything about endpoint security, all security, moves too fast for us. Even a low rate of failure is bad. It's humans that use weak passwords and reuse them on multiple sites. We're the ones who click on phishing links and download unauthorized software. So, but to the extent that we must trust humans, we need to make them as alert as possible to the threat, so we can train them to be suspicious of unsolicited communications from strangers and how to identify whether emails and other communications actually come from the purported authors. But most people don't want to be suspicious all the time, and they then drift off into security checks that get in the way of their work. And some of the cues that you should look for are really hard to find. The professional services for training employees also periodically send out test emails to employees to see if they click on the link or what they do. I haven't seen any numbers I really trust on how effective this training is, but I don't have a better idea. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank you, everyone. I enjoyed my part, and I think you'll all enjoy the rest of the event. So back to you.
Well, Larry, we definitely will enjoy the rest of the event. And now we are all primed and ready to get into it. You've lit up our brains. You've got us awake and focused and ready to learn some more cool stuff, which is the perfect way to start out an EcoCast. Now, we have a quick question for all of you. Speaking of lighting up your brains, let's see if you're functioning and awake out there. We want to know what your time frame is for making some of the changes that we're going to hear about today. So today we're talking about endpoints, we're talking about humans and tech and where those intersect. And when you look at this, the problems that have brought you here today, the reason you're here, whatever sparked your curiosity, does that feel like an urgent issue, or does it feel like something that's a little bit more longer term? Are you thinking way, way, way ahead? We just started 2024 and you're already in 2025. Or are you thinking maybe next week, next month, you need to make this change right away, or you have no sweet clue? And if that is your answer, hey, I'm with you. I kind of feel like I have no sweet clue as we start out this year. I don't know about you guys. I'm still dusting the cobwebs out of my brain a little bit as we get back into things. I see that we are largely towards the year or not sure marks from this group, kind of leaning more towards long term, or we don't really know. And that's kind of a cool way to start the day, because that tells me that everybody's in research mode. We're all in learning mode, and that is exactly how we want to start an EcoCast. Speaking of which, let's get things rolling. All right, my friends. Well, as you can see, we are kicking off the EcoCast on a great note, because we have with us here today to get us started on this wonderful discussion, the CyberArk crew. We're going to be chatting with Andy Thompson, researching evangelist at CyberArk. Very, very cool title. And you know what, Andy, I know you have a really interesting presentation, a couple of demos that you lined up for us, lots of really good things coming our way, lots in store for the audience. So I am going to step back and hand things on over to you. Take it away, Andy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Big Browser, attacking and defending the process that knows everything. My name is Andy Thompson, and I am the Offensive Security Research Evangelist here at CyberArk Labs. And I don't have a whole lot of time, so we're just going to get straight to business. We're going to be talking about how the Chromium engine, the code base under the hood running Chrome, Microsoft's Internet Edge, Komodo, Brave, Opera, a ton of different browsers, are inherently vulnerable to attack, and how they will ultimately expose secrets to threat actors. Well, what secrets might you be saying? Well, there's obviously the passwords, but there's so much more. There's cookies and session tokens, along with credit card numbers, addresses. There's, again, a ton of information that's at stake here. And I'm going to show you what I like to say 5 ways to skin a cat here. This is really kind of our agenda of what we're going to be walking through today. I'm going to show you as a standard user how we can steal passwords and cookies through things like keyed in data. We'll talk about how inline attacks can be used to harvest secrets. And then we're going to really talk about the Chromium specific threats, such as the fact that passwords are stored locally on disk, as well as easily accessible within the memory. And last but not least, if you just simply ask the browser, it's incredibly easy to steal sensitive information. So with that said, let's get started and talk about our first method of secret stealing, and this is keylogging. You're probably familiar with keylogging before. This is, the typical stealing passwords one keystroke at a time. And there's 2 different styles of keylogging. First, there's the traditional hardware-based, the little dongle that sits between the computer and the keyboard. This is one method, but there's a new style that's more covert. This is the OMG cable. It masquerades and functions just like a regular Lightning or USB-C cable, but it's broadcasting its own pirate Wi-Fi signal that allows a threat actor to not only intercept and receive keystrokes, but also send keystrokes as well. Now, there's another type of keylogger. It's the software-based keylogger, and there's a ton of free and open source keyloggers out there. They're also just about in every single command and control framework out there. And a lot of the apps that you may not be aware of, like TikTok, for example. TikTok's in-app browser supports JavaScript-based keylogging. So I don't know why you would ever log a username or password in the in-app browser, but just be aware those keystrokes can be logged. All right, so I'm going to show you a really quick and dirty keylogging example. We're going to be using the basic Windows keylogger, okay? What we'll do is just go to a website, type in our username, type in our password, and our keylogger will log the individual keystrokes, okay? So now that we have successfully logged in, all we need to do now is stop the keylogger process and then go review the keystrokes that we typed. Okay, so now that we've stopped the logger process, we go and review the keystrokes, and here you have it. Positive horse battery staple. What is that? Well, it's a reference to a very nerdy comic, XKCD, which talks about how to create a very strong password. And if you'll notice here in the bottom left-hand corner, it says correct horse battery staple, not positive horse battery staple. Unfortunately, I made an error, and I already recorded my video demo, so tough. We're just going to go with positive horse battery staple, okay? So how do we go about protecting ourselves from keyloggers, right? Well, there's several ways, 3 actually, that I'm going to recommend. The first is through having some sort of hardware device detection. There's several applications out there that will monitor the system for keyloggers, such as GhostPress or KL detector. You also have application control. You can't have a keylogger running on your system, a software-based keylogger, if you've got aggressive application control that doesn't allow that keylogger process to run. Makes sense, right? And then the other is really simple, password managers. If a password manager, even like the weakest password manager available, like Chromium's password manager, if it's injecting the password into the property field rather than actually typing out the keystrokes, well, then it will mitigate the risk from a keylogger, but not other methods. Another method that can be used to harvest those sorts of credentials would be through inline attacks, otherwise known as adversary in the middle. Again, this is more applicable to the operating system in general, but a typical inline attack is like this, all right? You have your standard server-client communication going backwards and forwards, but when you have an attacker in the middle, they're able to intercept and even, manipulate that data going back and forth between the client and the server. And there's 2 ways that we could go about stealing secrets through this method. The first would be at the network layer, using some sort of a proxy server to intercept the network traffic. But then there's another type of way, and it's just using social engineering. This here is Trusted Sec's social engineering toolkit. Dave Kennedy and crew were able to get set installed into the base image of Kali Linux. So I just spun up a fresh VM here, launched set, and what we're going to do is we're going to use set to make a phishing site. There are tons of built-in templates here within set. You could even clone your own website if you so chose, but we're spinning up an instance of X or Twitter, okay? So now that the web server is running, all we need to do is convince our mark to go to that site, whether it's through social engineering, like phishing, or maybe a DNS poisoning attack. It really doesn't matter. But once you've convinced your user to go to that website and authenticate using their username and password, and even if they're MFA challenged too, once they have attempted to log on like they've done here, all an attacker needs to do is go review the logs of their server, and there you have it, folks. Positive horse battery staple. So how do we go about protecting against these sorts of inline attacks, whether they be network or social engineering based? And there's a couple of ways, really. The first would be through encryption methods. Simply put, by making sure and analyzing the TLS or SSL certs, you're ensuring that you know who you're talking to. So you know that you're talking, in this example, to the X servers or Twitter servers instead of some fly-by-night phishing site, right? Also, VPNs can provide some value. They do a really good job at protecting from HTTP, that unencrypted traffic. But TLS has basically taken over the internet. So like 99% of all web traffic is encrypted. So that's why these radio advertisements saying, oh, protect yourselves from hackers using a VPN, it's not entirely all true. But what is really, in my opinion, the most powerful way to prevent these sorts of inline attacks is end user awareness training. So many people think that, oh, the end user is the weakest link, but I disagree. I tend to think that empowering your end users with end user awareness training takes them from being the weakest link to the front line of defense. And so making sure that they're aware of these style of social engineering attacks and making sure they're monitoring their servers that they're actually talking to goes a long way in preventing inline attacks. All right, moving forward, we're going to talk about the Chromium-specific vulnerabilities. And I say vulnerabilities because there's not actually a vulnerability per se, but there's nothing that the browsers believe that can be done to protect against this. And we're going to first talk about secrets stored on disk, okay? Chromium has this password file, right? This password file is stored locally on the machine, and it's encrypted. So ideally, nobody should be able to read it, right? However, the private key, it's actually stored as an environment variable running as the logged in user. So as long as you're logged in as the end user, all you have to do is call the environment variable up and use that to decrypt the encrypted file. Again, incredibly easy to do. So if you pop a end user's machine, yeah, you just get the encryption key, and you're off to the races. But also, if you pop a domain controller, you get the master DP API decryption key, and you can read the password files of any Chromium browser on your domain. So that just makes it even more scary, right? So here is the file path of the password file. And so this is the file, folks, that you really want to protect from applications like these. Chrome Pass, Lasagna, Hack Chrome, all of these do a really simple job, and they do it really well. I'm going to demo Hack Chrome here. All it does is this. It reads the password file, it pulls the decryption key from the environment variable, decrypts the file, and spits it out on screen, folks. It's literally that easy. I know. So let me show you how easy it is to also protect your machine from this type of password file attack, okay? Really simple. All you got to do is make sure that only the browser can read that password file. So again, here is that password file that we have to protect. Only Chromium's browser should be able to read that file. However, while Chromium is doing its version update, it will also take a backup of that password file. So if you really want to protect it, you need to do a couple of things. You need to create this policy that implements wildcards as well, but also a couple other things. Again, you want to make sure that nothing can read it, but also you want to make sure it can't copy it, make sure you can't rename it or move the file, or even like zip it up. Compressing it might take it out of policies. So again, you only want the browser to read that file. That is it. Okay. So moving on, and in a similar vein, we're going to talk about how the browser exposes the secrets in the process's memory. Okay. This is how it works. Simply put, if you know what you're looking for, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Okay. I'm going to show you with the understanding that we know what that needle is, our password, positive horse battery staple. I'm going to show you where in the memory, in clear text, that password is stored. I'm going to use this program here called Process Explorer. It's this application, again, running as a standard user, allows you to analyze the memory of other processes running on the machine. We're going to look through some of the strings and see if we can find anything interesting here. So again, we know what our password is, right? Positive horse battery staple. Knowing that, we're going to go search through the memory, and lo and behold, take a look, folks. There, clear as day, in clear text, again, as a standard user, we're able to see positive horse battery staple straight up in the memory. All right, so let's jump straight into the demos. I've got 3 demos that will progressively build on what we're talking about today. In our first one, we are going to launch Chrome's password manager, expose the credentials in memory, and then use our malware to harvest those credentials. So again, using Chrome's built-in password manager, by just launching it, you're literally loading every credential into the process's memory. So now, using our custom crafted malware, we analyze, we find that Chrome exe process, we read the memory and spit out 4 usernames, passwords, and URLs. It's just that easy, folks. All right, moving on to our second demonstration. This one, we're not going after passwords, we're going after cookies, okay? So what you see here on the right is our user. They're authenticating with their username, their very, very complex password. Heck, they're even using multi-factor. Now, we're using SMS, and you shouldn't be doing that in the first place, but honestly, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're using SMS, Radius, SAML. It doesn't matter because this is all post-authentication. Once you've authenticated, even with MFA, that cookie is in memory and it's ripe for the theft, okay? So now that we've authenticated, we're running our custom malware that, again, detects the Chrome process, analyzes the memory, and finds the cookies. In this circumstance, we found 4 different cookies. So what an attacker would now do is copy and paste those cookies onto their attacker machine, and then they're done with the victim's machine. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use a browser extension called Cookie Editor to create our own cookie. There's easier ways to do this, but I just wanted to kind of show you. What you do is you basically copy and paste the properties from your cookie file into the browser extension. Now, I'm going to fast forward this a little bit, but suffice to say, once you have entered in the value and the expiration and everything, all you need to do is save the cookie file, reload gmail.com, and boom, you have hijacked the session. It's literally that easy, folks. As you can see, we have successfully hijacked our victim's Gmail session. Okay, now we're on our 3rd session hijack demo, and this time we're not going after Chrome exe, we're going after MS Edge exe. That's right, Microsoft's Chromium-based web browser. This time we're going after Microsoft's Office 365 OneDrive product. So as you can see here, we are logging in with our secure username and very complex password. I decided to skip over the multi-factor this time because, again, it doesn't matter. Regardless of whether you've used MFA or not, the cookie is deposited after the fact. So again, Now, as a standard user, we're going to run our custom crafted malware. And this time, it's not looking for Chrome, it's looking for MS Edge exe. It found it. It's analyzing the process, seeing if it can find any cookies, and oh boy, does it. O365 actually uses a lot of different cookies. I mean, a lot. And so rather than importing and manually creating all of them, what you can do is really just, again, import them, compress them into an encrypted file, and then import all of them at the same time into the web browser extension, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and skip all this in the demo here. Let's see, probably about right here. So, yep. So we've gone ahead, we've imported them in. All that we need to do now is just reload the page. And so let's see if we can find that URL here. There we go. That is the URL that we're going to need to hit in order to access our hijacked session. So we just copy and paste that. Once we do that, we're in like Flint. All right, so here you go. Take a look. Hijack complete. We have successfully taken over this session of our victim's O365 session. We're able to peruse and ultimately exfiltrate all this juicy, sensitive information. And the thing is that we didn't even have to go to all that effort. We could have just bought the credentials outright anyway. This here, folks, is the Genesis Marketplace, an underground marketplace for the buying and selling of usernames, passwords, but right here we're looking at cookies and session tokens. That's right. These are from all over the world, and I've just got a couple that I want to show you. This one here, $59, gives you access to all sorts of things like Tumblr, but Office 365, Microsoft Live, Amazon, Google, Twitter, a ton of stuff. 59 bucks, folks. Here's another one here. This one here is $24, but it gives you access to Box, Dropbox, Android, tons of stuff, right? Here's another one here. This one, though, 17 bucks, has browser fingerprints. That's pretty darn cool, too. So, luckily for us, the Genesis Marketplace is no more. A collaboration of law enforcement agencies all over the world as part of Operation Cookie Monster shut down the Genesis Marketplace. However, there are a ton of other marketplaces on the dark web that do buy and sell these cookies online. So we're not out of the woods yet. But let's move on and talk about how to mitigate and protect against these style of in-memory cookie harvesting attacks. What you got to do, folks, is really simple. You got to make sure that the only process that can read the browser's process is the browser. I mean, it's pretty simple. Only Chrome should be reading Chrome's memory. And this can be done in a couple ways using CyberArk's Endpoint Privilege Manager. What you'd really want to do is make sure that only binaries that are signed by Google, for example, are allowed to read Google Chrome's memory, okay? Also, you want to make sure that the original file is chrome.exe or msedge.exe. You want to make sure that the malware hasn't been like renamed to Chrome to try to circumvent these controls. So that's one of the definite ways to make sure that your memory is protected by only allowing the browser to access that memory. All right, last, and I don't know, this is pretty interesting here. This is by just simply asking the browser in a particular way using command line arguments. It's incredibly easy to find secrets, okay? So this isn't anything new. This was actually discovered back in 2018 by this person by the name of Alex in Australia, actually. They were able to figure out that using the remote debugging port command line argument extends the capabilities of the browser by a significant margin. It ultimately allows a Python script to be run that will then just export all the cookies into a file. I mean, it's that easy. This, folks, is Cookie Crimes, and this is a very, very simple demo of Cookie Crimes. What you got to do is you got to launch the Chromium browser with the remote debugging pipe command line argument, okay? You could do this headless with no GUI, but that kind of makes for a boring demo. So we're going to go to KLI.org, or the Klingon Language Institute for any of you Trekkies out there. But now that we've got our Chrome process running in remote debugging mode, all we have to do now is run our Cookie Crimes script. So what it's doing is because Chromium is running in remote debugging mode, it's requesting the cookies and it's just porting them out to JSON. So once the script is done running, like it is now, all we need to do is just open up Notepad, copy and paste the JSON into our browser extension, and we've hijacked the sessions of that machine. So there you see it, folks, plain as day. You got your cookies in clear text and JSON format. I'm not going to go through all the effort of doing the actual session hijacking, but suffice to say, you see that, that's enough enough to show you that the attack works. So what do we need to do to protect against this type of attack? Well, we got to make sure that certain command line arguments aren't executed. There are legitimate reasons why these command line arguments might be used if you're a sysadmin or a developer or something like that, but our standard users don't need to use these command line arguments. This same concept applies with lulbins or living off the land binaries. Sysadmin might want to run certutil, but standard users pretty much don't need to. So what I would recommend is these three particular command line arguments: remote debugging port, remote debugging pipe, and headless. There's no reason our standard end users need to be using these arguments. But EPM allows for you to have granular controls over your processes. So maybe you want to allow Chrome to run, but certain arguments block. EPM can do it. Maybe you just don't want to allow certain applications to run at all. EPM can do that. This is really why Endpoint Privilege Manager's application control capacity is incredibly powerful. So there you have it, folks. Those are the 5 ways to go about skinning our cat. 5 ways as a standard user someone can steal browser secrets. Okay, so let's as a review, we talk about key logging as a way. We talk about how inline attacks allow you to intercept communications and hijack secrets. But then you also have the fact that Chromium stores credentials on a very weakly encrypted file. Okay, it's very easy to unencrypt and read that password file. It's just as easy to read the memory of the browser process. And again, these credentials, these cookies, these secrets are stored in clear text. And last but not least, if you just ask the browser with the correct command line arguments, it's incredibly easy to steal browser secrets. So what do you got to do to protect it? Again, as a review, you got to deny. Make sure that you're denying these rogue processes the ability to read that password file. You need to be able to deny processes from reading the browser memory. You have to really make sure that you're denying access to rogue command line arguments that can be abused. These are the things that, again, are built into CyberArk's Endpoint Privilege Manager. These default policies can be flipped on with a literal flick of a switch. Well, figurative flick of a switch. And that's all you need to protect your browsers because, again, they're inherently not doing a good enough job. So with that said, thank you so much for listening to my presentation today. I hope you learned something.
I think we all learned a little something from you today, Andy. That was awesome. Thank you so much. I never really loved the phrase how to skin a cat or more ways than one to skin a cat. And yet it is evocative, right? We all get what it means. We're with you. I did enjoy the Klingon language references. That was fun. That was just a great chat. Andy, thank you so much. Honestly, just tons of great information. And we've got the CyberArk team. We went a little long on our presentation, so we've got the CyberArk team here answering questions over live chat. And I have to say, all of you have come back from holiday break with just absolute fire in your brains. The questions are amazing, and they've been so exciting all week. And I'm just loving the conversations that everyone's having in that live chat. So keep those questions coming in. We will get some answers back to you over live chat. And then anything that doesn't get responded today in live chat, you are going to get answers back over email. So either way, answers coming your way. You know, if you're feeling that fire light tickle in your brain today, get it all out there. Get those questions out. Now's the time because we're going to get you some great answers as we go through. Now, another great way to get the answers is to do one of 2 things. You get to decide which one you want to do first, the choose your own adventure, there is a wish list up on your screen right now. It looks like a poll, but think of it as your wish list. Think of it as your easy button. You're going to click on the things that you want, and CyberArk is going to send them exactly to you. So if the questions you had were around pricing, if the questions you had were wanting to dig into the console a little bit, Andy really got you excited and you want to see how it works, you want that demo, you can click on that wish list right now, and CyberArk will follow up with you and make sure you get that information, that follow-up that you're looking for. Your second choose your own adventure way to get a little bit more info is to head to the handouts tab. If you click on the CyberArk link, you can find that white paper there. Quick start with least privilege using Endpoint Privilege Manager. This is a great way to follow up on what we were just talking about with Andy. And I think least privilege is something that a lot of us have questions about. It's something that we understand or think we understand, but it can be applied in a lot of different ways, or action can be taken in a lot of different ways. So this is a great white paper to learn a little bit more about how CyberArk can help you with that. So head on over, click on that handouts tab, and make sure you've got that as well. Now, I just gave you guys 2 pieces of homework. So how about I take on a little bit of homework? Why don't I give you a $300 Amazon gift card? How's that for a trade-off? We are going to start out with our very first winner, $300 Amazon gift card going to Nav Hassan from Washington. Nav Hassan of Washington, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card. Congratulations to you. And we will follow up with you after we wrap, so stay tuned for that. And don't forget, my friends, there is still that $50 Amazon gift card coming at you from each one of our sessions. So you can get that $50 Amazon gift card, and we will be reviewing all the questions asked after we wrap, and then choosing that question and following up with them. So stay tuned. That could still be coming your way. I see some awesome high fives coming in from the crew, and I love that. I am always happy to see those wonderful good vibes. Keep that coming, my friends. And we are definitely going to keep the good vibes rolling on our end, because we've got another awesome presenter in the wings. I am so very excited to introduce you to our next, and now, my friends, I do have to say, our last presenter of the day. But don't worry, as I said, we're not winding down. We're not bringing it to a close. We're ramping things up. We're ending on a high note here, because we're going to be chatting with VMware. I am very excited to introduce you to our final speaker of the day, and that is Steve DeJarnette, Director of Product Security Solutions, EUC, and User Computing there. All right, Steve, thank you so much for being here with us today to bring us on home in style. I know you've got some great content lined up for us, and we're going to leave some time for Q&A at the end so we can dig into some of these awesome audience questions. So audience, get your questions rolling in. Steve, I'm going to hand the mic on over to you. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the intro. So today we want to talk a bit more about understanding the human and technical solutions to protecting your endpoints. Now, we've all seen the headlines about all of the security breaches, security problems that companies have been facing. Hopefully none of your companies have shown up in these, but it's something that keeps us all awake, keeps us all wondering of, are we next? And more importantly, and part of the reason you're here today, is what can we be doing to better protect our users, our devices, our applications, and our data so that we don't end up in the headlines. And the good news is there's a lot of things that you can do today with products you may already own or products that are available that can help you better protect your endpoints, your users, and your data. Now, early in the pandemic, as customers were coming to us trying to figure out how to move from fully in-person work to fully distributed work, they came to us with a lot of questions about how could they do that? How could they do that safely and securely? Now, the interesting thing in all of this is virtually all companies have been distributed work companies for a long time. We may not have thought about it that way, but almost every company had business travelers who would work from different locations, people who would travel to different offices, salespeople who seldom ever were in company offices because they're best doing their jobs when they're out meeting with their customers. And so almost every company had infrastructure in place to help them enable remote work. The question was how to do it at scale. And another thing that they probably hadn't thought as much about was for people who are working full-time, when the bulk of your workforce is working remotely full-time, the things that you do to enable really good experiences for your users with the technology and the applications they're using in your corporate offices and your campuses aren't necessarily things that were in place for people working from home. So how do you enable a good experience on devices with applications that they're using? How do you enable secure access to your internal applications? Do you in fact have to support personally owned devices, and how do you do that effectively and safely? So these are all questions our customers were asking us, and these are all pieces that we were putting together in our solutions. Now, going back to that earlier slide about all of the threats, the breaches, and the issues, if I didn't put a legend up on this and didn't put a headline up on it, if I just showed the chart, you might look at that. And if you thought that was your company's profit performance, your revenue performance, if that was the performance of your retirement funds or something like that, you might feel like that chart was a nice looking one. Everything's moving up and to the right. Unfortunately, this is data from our partners at Lookout about devices that have encountered one or more threats in the past quarter. And unfortunately, that moving up and to the right view is not the one we want to see. You see there are a number of issues led by things like phishing, but also OS vulnerabilities, device risks, etc. And this is just about threats associated with mobile devices. Now, I mentioned phishing on the previous slide, and that's a threat that most companies have been aware of for a long time. Companies often put in place things like email security solutions, since phishing historically has come about in a lot of companies through email. But the interesting thing we find when we look at mobile devices is even if your email phishing solution is 100% effective, stops every phishing attempt through email, that only covers 15% of the attack surface for phishing on mobile devices. Things like messaging apps, games, productivity apps, social media, all the things that we interact with every day, in particular on our mobile devices, represent additional vectors that people can try to phish your users. And the other challenge that we face on mobile devices compared to a traditional desktop device is we're often doing things on the go while our attention isn't always as fully on as it needs to be. We're multitasking between different apps and things. And just by nature of the device itself, we don't have some of the techniques and capabilities that we do on a desktop device to look at things like the full URL of a link that we're about to click on to see, does this really look like one I should click on or not? And I think in our personal lives, probably almost everybody on this call has received an SMS, an iMessage, a message in some system from Amazon or your local postal service saying a package has been delayed and you need to click on this link to handle it or get it redirected. Just coming out of the holiday seasons here, that probably was even more so a case. So I think this is something where we can all relate. We've probably all seen this in our personal lives, and likely many of you have seen this in your professional lives, where different types of phishing attacks are sent out to your users across a variety of different mechanisms. And again, on mobile, the number of applications, the number of places that those phishing attacks can be perpetrated is very large. Combine that with the fact that it's never been easier to stand up your own phishing campaign. The software is readily available online. It's easy to do. You see this map over on the right where sources of phishing campaigns are spread all over the world, but targets of phishing attacks are truly global. So this is a real challenge. When we think about the overall diverse and evolving threat landscape, right? Phishing is a big one, but it's not the only one. Malware on devices, whether it's mobile or desktop, OS vulnerabilities, just keeping your devices up to date and patched against known vulnerabilities that the OS vendors are patching every single day, every single week. Making sure that your users haven't intentionally or otherwise misconfigured a device. And the threats are manyfold on both mobile and desktop devices. So what do we do about this? What can we do to help better protect ourselves, our users, and our devices? Well, you've probably heard the concept of zero trust discussed quite a bit over the last couple of years. It's not actually a new concept, but it's one that's gained a lot of traction. And it really starts with the core idea that instead of enabling users with a set of privileges and access and trusting them to do the right things with that, you start from the principle of least privilege. You also look to validate more as a user is accessing an application or a resource to ensure not just that they can authenticate correctly, not just that they're authorized to use that application or resource, but also check other context to understand, does this look like a normal application access for this user? Is this coming from a place they typically are coming from? Is it from a device that we've normally seen them access applications or resources on before? Does it look normal for this user, or is there anything that looks unusual? And using that information combined with perhaps different sensitivities of applications that you may have for your users, whether those applications are hosted in your own data centers or they're hosted in an IaaS provider or even SaaS applications. Looking at things like overall app criticality or sensitivity, and applying different policies to different types of applications, requiring different levels of trust to be demonstrated. And again, that trust can start from simple things like, is this device running the latest version of an operating system? Is the user one that we expect to see accessing this application? Is the application one that is normally used by this user at this time of day, at this location? And we can also look at the device itself and really understand more about it. Is encryption set up on it right? Does the passcode set up, is it strong enough to protect the device? Is there any indication that the device itself is compromised, either with malware or unusual settings? Is the device configured properly such that it's in scope and in the proper setup for your users and your devices? And then we can apply analytics and really look at not just at the specific settings, but also look to see, is there anything unusual about this device compared to other devices like it? Is there anything unusual about the location for this user, et cetera? So with Workspace ONE and the Workspace ONE family of products, we're able to help you provide all of this visibility into the device, the user, the applications, and the locations easily with things like our Workspace ONE UEM compliance policies, with conditional access policies for accessing applications. So you can easily build those different layered access policies for an application depending on the user, depending on the criticality of the application, and depending on the configuration of the device. We also, as I mentioned, can apply dynamic risk assessment to this. We can look at things like, for a given device, how does this device look compared to how other devices in your environment look? Let's say you have a Windows laptop. How is this device configured, and how does that compare to the configuration of other Windows devices in your environment? If it looks very similar, the risk may be very low. Perhaps this device is even more up to date than normals. Definitely the risk is very low. But maybe this device hasn't been updated in a while. Maybe some of the settings are unusual. That might elevate the risk of this. And these are all things that we can dynamically assess and apply as conditions, as inputs to conditional access policies. Thinking about things like location. Again, in the past, as we've protected applications, we've done it primarily through a combination of authentication methods, typically usernames and passwords, and authorization. Is this user authorized to access this application or resource? The problem with things like usernames and passwords is if I learn your username and password, I can leverage that to, in combination with what you're authorized to use to access your resources. By combining things like login risk, I can look at this authentication and say, yes, you may have authenticated successfully. You may be authorized to use this application, but you seem to be coming from a very unusual location for you. So maybe we want to go through an additional step-up process, do a second factor of evaluation to see, is this in fact really you? or perhaps have your credentials been compromised, and is this someone with malicious intent trying to leverage your credentials? And we can tie this in seamlessly. Your users never have to see this unless we see something unusual. So this goes back to providing a great user experience for your users and better security for you and your enterprise. In addition to that, we can also tie in things like our secure remote access solution with Workspace ONE Tunnel and our unified access gateway that allows us to replace a traditional layer 3 VPN solution with something that is much more fine-grained and fine-tuned to limit access only to the resources that are entitled. In a traditional VPN solution, the device connects to the VPN and is given an address on the network, and now that device can access anything that's on your network, whether that represents resources the user's actually entitled to, or other resources, other applications, other solutions that the user may not be entitled to, but now they have a path to access them. With Workspace ONE Tunnel and our Zero Trust Network Access solution, we give you a solution that allows you to tailor the access from the specific application running on the user's device to the specific application or service in your data center that the user is entitled to. That means I can write a policy that says, from the Edge browser on this device, I can access this internal application. If I try to use a different application, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, I would not be allowed to access that because I can tie that policy all the way down to the application running on the device over to the application and service in the data center. I might know about another application or service in the data center, but if my access policy doesn't allow it, I'll never be able to see it. I'll never be able to access it because I don't have a direct connection to the network. I'm going through a proxy, and therefore I can control only access to the applications that I as a user am entitled to. We can start off customers who are moving from a traditional layer 3 VPN. We can provide the equivalent of full device access to all resources. And then over time, you can tailor that down and sculpt the policy so it is just the specific application on the device to the specific application that the user needs to access. Now, we've talked about a lot of things to help the user better access applications and resources, and at the same time do so while ensuring that the device is meeting our standards, our policies for access to those resources, providing different levels of policy depending on the type of application the user is trying to access. But there's also a number of things we do to help make the lives of the IT and security teams easier, starting with things like our automated response capabilities in Workspace ONE Intelligence. With Workspace ONE Intelligence, in conjunction with our Workspace ONE Trust Network security partnership program, we can take data from security solutions such as mobile threat defense, endpoint protection products, CASB, and other network security solutions, and bring that data into Workspace ONE Intelligence. So whenever a threat is detected by any of those solutions, that information can be used combined with the advanced automated workflows in Workspace ONE Intelligence to trigger an automated response to any kind of security threat that the user experiences in the environment. So now we can help the IT and the end user services and security teams work together to automate rapid response when a security threat is detected. We can do things like change the configuration of the device the user is accessing from. For instance, we could remove things like the VPN profile from their device, so thus cutting off access to sensitive internal applications and resources until that device is cleaned up and brought back into compliance. We can also make calls out into other third-party systems, perhaps ticketing systems where you could open a ticket for the incident response or security teams to go along with this threat detection event. We can send messages to users through email or other enterprise messaging applications. So you can orchestrate an entire response flow around this threat detection event and take the same action every single time and not have to wait for somebody in security operations to get around to looking at the threat detection to decide whether this is truly an issue and if it needs a response. You can automate those response actions right away. and better protect the environment, keep the user informed of what's happening and why it's happening to them, let them know about the next steps. For instance, somebody from incident response or security operations will be contacting you to review the device and make sure it's set up properly, make sure any threats are removed from it before you gain access back, and then automate the remediation issues. So we work to make the jobs of IT and security teams easier as well. Now, there's a number of different use cases for Zero Trust. We talked about conditional access to applications, but let's talk about some specific examples that customers have brought to us. The first is around sensitive app access. A customer of ours in online real estate provides access to a large number of applications to all of their employees, HR, payroll, corporate portal, et cetera, that every employee has access to. But a small subset of users who are involved in home financing have access to some very sensitive and specialized applications for financing. And so they needed a different access policy for those subset of users. And that access policy was not just access to a different application, it was also demonstration of a higher level of trust in order to access that. And so with conditional access, our compliance policies, and our risk analytics, we were able to enable that for them. We had a large financial services institution who wanted to enable remote access to web-based resources for tens of thousands of knowledge workers and move them to a new model that would work on personally owned devices that didn't have a full MDM or UEM enrollment required. Now, we can't necessarily provide the same level of confidence about an unmanaged device, but we do have the ability to leverage things like location, basic posture to help enable them to provide access to some of those applications and services. And that means that there are certain applications that now their employees can use on the road, on the go, that they would have had to go into an office for before. And finally, acquired companies. This is something we've talked to customers about for a lot of times before, but now we ourselves at VMware are going through as we've recently been acquired by Broadcom. And when you do this, employees of the acquired company often need access to applications and resources that the new parent company has access to. But until you integrate the user directories and authentication space, it's hard to do that. With Zero Trust and application access, we can essentially treat all of those new employees from the acquired company as BYO or non-employee users, and we can provide access to selected applications in the parent company, your new payroll, your new directory, easily. So with our Workspace ONE family, we can help you on any endpoint, any operating system platform, with any use case, better secure those endpoints, keep them up to date and patched, ensure compliance of those applications and of those devices, and enable secure remote access to any application much more safely, much more seamlessly, and provide a better experience to your end users. Thanks everyone for your time today, and I look forward to your questions.
Oh man, well, Steve, thank you so much. You've queued us up for such an interesting conversation because we've got tons of questions coming in and we are definitely going to get into them. But before we start getting into the Q&A session, I do want to point out to everyone out in the audience right now that if you look at your screen right now, there is a wish list on your screen. Think of it as a poll, but yeah, it's a wish list, right? It's what is going to be helpful for you to follow up on this conversation that we've just had with Steve, that we're going to continue on with our Q&A session here, because there is so much to learn and there's obviously a lot more to dig into from here. So regardless of what's going to be helpful, the data sheets, the white papers, the case studies, the pricing info, there is something for you up on that screen right now. Click on what is going to be useful for you, and then VMware will make sure that you get exactly what you need. So this is the easy button. Your future self is going to thank you. Just click on the screen right now. While you're doing that, Steve and I are going to get into some questions. Steve, are you ready?
I am. Let's go.
All right, let's do it. All right, I want to start with this one here. Do you see any data as to the location of most of these security origins?
Yeah, I think the question is probably asking about where are the threats or the attacks actually
Yes.
coming from, and we probably all hear in the news about the differently named threat actors, APTs, or the ones named after animals, and ultimately we hear about them being attributed to organizations or nations. Here's the thing: most attackers don't necessarily host their attacking infrastructure from IP addresses or domains that would indicate actually where they are. They're smart. They want to hide. So, they may find that they host their infrastructure to attack you in a country, maybe in the same country you're in. So, looking at origins, trying to block based on locations. There's some reasons to do it. There's some values to that. But the attackers are not necessarily going to advertise themselves as to where they're coming from. I guess the other point is they come from everywhere. So location isn't necessarily going to help you as a full filter to block attackers.
Yeah, isn't that funny? It's kind of like I heard once that the reason people like watching true crime things is they're always trying to figure out, where the risk is going to be, and so it's actually like you're like taking notes for survival. But
Yep.
I think in some cases we think that information is really helpful, but there are some cases where knowing exactly where the threat is coming from isn't going to be the thing that necessarily protects us. The point is focusing on the walls and the protection.
Yep.
All right, well, let's get into another question. How about what are the I like when we talk about best practices and recommended steps. Let's get into some action here, Steve. What are the recommended steps and considerations for establishing policies to implement a least trust conditional access approach effectively? What would you suggest?
Yeah, so in one of the earlier slides in my presentation, if people go back and watch the recording, it's the slide title was Securing Access to Any Application, right? It kind of lays out some of the basics here, right? So think about it this way. When you're thinking about least privileged access, the first thing you want to understand is what are the applications that you have that you're providing access to? And think about them a little bit in terms of sensitivity. Right. You may have some application that doesn't really host a bunch of sensitive company data. My favorite example is, if you work on a corporate campus, if there's a company cafeteria, there's probably a website that has something about what's available for lunch today. Like that's probably not a high risk application. So you probably don't need to demonstrate a lot of trust to access the company cafeteria menu. On the other hand, if you have a treasury application where you transfer money between companies, your source code management system, your customer relation database, right? Those are probably very critical applications. They contain lots of sensitive information. So doing some segmentation, understanding the different types of applications you have, the different sensitivities of data. Don't try to have 50 buckets of sensitivity. Think about 3 or 4. And just try to bucket those. And then as you think about those applications, think about what level of trust do I need people to demonstrate to access those applications, right? So do I need to know that someone's coming in from a corporate owned, corporate managed device? Do I need to know that that device is compliant with my company sets of policies about how the device is configured, what's installed on it or what's not installed on it, et cetera. And so you can build different application access policies and have different trust validations that you require. And then finally, the other piece of this is authorization. For a given user, what applications, what resources are they authorized to access? Based on their role, based on their job function. So make sure you review those, make sure you have different levels of authorization, different levels of access. Many applications, whether they're hosted, applications in your own data center, whether they're SaaS apps, they have a lot of different capabilities, a lot of different things that can be enabled for users. So make sure you're reviewing the authorizations. Don't just give everybody full administrator, full privilege access when you're providing access to resources. Think about, again, coming up with some sets of roles and applying privileges based on roles and needs If you think about zero trust, one of the core tenets of zero trust is least privileged access, right? So don't give people the most privilege just so they don't have to come back and keep asking for things, or just so you don't have to be bothered to approve something or do it. Think about, what do they need to do their job? Sculpt the roles accordingly, and you'll reduce the attack surface that way.
Steve, you've just given us a bunch of really wonderful, actionable steps, which I think is so important, because kind of what you were hinting at the start of your answer here, that sometimes it can feel overwhelming. And so, chunking or taking bits and pieces and just starting somewhere. And you've really given us at least 3 or 4 very actionable start somewhere kind of steps. And so I do want to remind everyone, not only are there lots of ways to follow up with VMware after we wrap, and we're going to go through those in just a second, but also we will, as Steve just mentioned, we will send the recording out to everyone out there. And I saw a couple questions coming in about that. If you missed some of that, if you weren't ready to write down all of Steve's wonderful action points, you will get this recording. I'm going to recommend right now that you come back and rewatch this presentation, because there's a lot, and certainly the Q&A as well. Steve, for anyone out there that is looking for that next step to take with VMware, they want to jump in right away, start learning more, what is the first step that you would recommend?
Well, the first step is to figure out what's the inventory of devices you've got, your users. Do you have tooling in place that allows you to set and define posture and policy for those devices? So again, understanding what you have, having a way where you can implement and enforce policy on the devices, at least the devices that are fully corporate issued, corporate managed. And if you have devices that are personally owned, personally not corporate owned or issued, right? There's ways we can help you with those devices as well, and at least understanding the posture of those devices, and thinking about what you enable access to from a device that isn't fully managed, one that might have a work profile or a personal profile on it, and then one that is fully managed.
And we've actually got a really cool resource, or what that your team provided, Steve, that's available to everyone right now. If you click on the Handouts tab and click on the VMware link, there's a sheet that's been created specifically for all of you in the audience today. So this was specifically curated for the audience here with us. And it's going to walk you through some next steps. It's also got some resources, including that 2023 Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report. That's a really cool read. But it's got some next steps to getting started with VMware, next steps to follow up on this conversation, some contacts for the team. So lots of great ways to kind of build in your next move with VMware if you're looking to learn a little bit more, besides all the wonderful things that Steve has just given us. So Steve, I really want to thank you for being here with us today. You are an excellent grand finale to this EcoCast. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation and for sticking around for some questions.
My pleasure. Thanks all of you for taking time out of your day to join us. It's great to have you around. Hopefully you found a few things that you can take away and consider to make your enterprises a little more safe and secure.
I love that. Thanks, Steve. All right, and to all of you out there who clicked on that wish list on the poll that's up on your screen, I'm leaving it up there as long as I can, because I want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to get that follow-up information that's going to be helpful for you. Again, a reminder to visit that Handouts tab. There's that great resource there, again, specifically curated for all of you out there in the audience. Really, really wonderful guide right through your next action steps. So click on that handout, click on that wish list, and as a thank you to you for doing all that wonderful hard clicking, that's hard work, I will give you a prize. How about that? Let's do another. It's going to be our final prize giveaway. This is a $300 Amazon gift card. We've got 2 more of them, so I'm going to give away 2 $300 Amazon gift cards to 2 lucky people who are here live and present with us at the EcoCast, and then I will read the entire winners list, because I know you guys always want to hear that as well. So our last 2 winners of the day, Cody Vu from California and Sherman Yu of New Jersey. We never get rhyming names. I love that. Cody Vu and Sherman Yu, you have won. Cody Vu from California, Sherman Yu from New Jersey. Here's our whole list of winners for the $300 Amazon gift card today. That is going to Nav Hassan from Washington, Cody Vu of California, and Sherman Yu from New Jersey. Congratulations, winners. Now, don't forget about that $50 Amazon gift card that we will be giving away to a lucky winner from each one of our sessions. So stay tuned for that. All right. Well, with that, my friends, we are going to start to bring things to a close, which means that it's time for me to remind you all that if you are here on the EcoCast and you're having a good time, you're enjoying the conversation, and you're thinking that maybe you would like to be a part of it, we would love that. So shoot us a message at connect@actualtechmedia.com. and let us know that you want to present on a summit, maybe an EcoCast, maybe a megacast, maybe a webinar. You want to come hang out with Mackenzie, Scott, Keith, and I. We would absolutely love to have a conversation with you. So shoot us an email and we will get that rolling. All right, well, that's going to bring us to the end of our EcoCast. And with that, I suppose, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank our incredible speakers here with us today from CyberArk and from VMware for making this EcoCast possible, for being here to lead us through this very interesting conversation. And as I said, a giant thank you to all of you. The conversations coming in right now, the interactive, engaging questions that are happening in our live chat are so exciting. It's so wonderful to see all of you. I missed all of you over the break. I missed these conversations because when we have these opportunities to come together and share maybe a little bit of here's a problem that I'm facing, here's a problem that I'm facing, how could I address this issue? And we get to talk about some of these best practices. We get to talk about these trends. It is so easy when we're in, especially when we're talking about security, right? We are in these risk factors every day. We are buried inside this. We are thinking about it all the time. And sometimes through these collaborative learning conversations, we get to pull our heads up, and instead we get to look down on it. We get to think about it strategically. We get to think ahead instead of just thinking about tomorrow or right now. And this, as I said at the start, is one of my favorite places to start to explore in this cross section of psychology and technology, where we get to talk about zero trust and least privilege access, and we get to dig into the endpoint user and the experience of that, the action points of all the security planning that we're putting into place. And that is an exciting conversation. So I hope that all of you are walking away feeling a little lit up. Maybe you've got that little tingle in your brain and you're ready to take this conversation forward. You're ready to continue asking those questions and continue doing that research, because that's how we make real change in our organizations, right? So to all of you out there, thank you for that first step coming here and participating. And I hope you take many future steps to continue to secure your organizations and your endpoints. One potential next step could be, wow, I didn't even intend that to be a segue, and look how nicely that segued. I get a gold star for that segue, right? Come on. All right, so you're going to come join us for an EcoCast on Wednesday, January 17th. That's noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, because we are going to be talking about securing the enterprise in 2024 and beyond. Okay, I promise not to make too many Buzz Lightyear jokes, but there's going to be a few, all right? Securing the enterprise in 2024 and beyond, Wednesday, January 17th, that's 2024, at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. All right, my friends, well, that's all I've got for you. I hope that I get to see you again on the 17th. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day.